Hi everybody, this is Chris with Laurel City Historical Fencing. I'm here with my student Luke today. And cheers Luke, thanks for coming in.
Cheers, thanks for having me.
And since we're all stuck in quarantine, I've had a lot of people talking to me about how to get into armor and how to do it for cheap. So we thought we'd make a video about how to do that. Going into my own background, I've been doing not only longsword and stuff for 16 years now, but just a few months after I started doing just any HEMA, I actually started on armored fencing because I luckily got to train with Christian Tobler for a long time, and his group really focuses on a lot on harness. So within the first 6 months of me picking up a sword, I was out on the tournament field with armor. It was loaner armor, but some of Christian Tobler's loaner armor is nicer than my actual armor now. So, Luke, how long have you been doing this stuff?
I've been doing HEMA, I think, about 3 years, and I've been doing harness fighting or training for about 2 years now, I believe. And in that time, I've gotten myself a full kit, and I've competed at the Long Point 2019 Deed of Arms, and I was at the WMAW for 2019's, their mini deed. So I've been able to go out and fence some really cool people.
Excellent, excellent. So, getting into armor for the first time, a lot of people are automatically thinking this is going to be crazy expensive, right? Yeah. And there is nothing wrong with, if you have the funds, if you have the means to talk to some of these Eastern European or Russian armor smiths, if you have the money to go to Jeff Wasson or one of these guys that are American smiths to make super high-end custom fitted stuff, go for it.
Awesome.
Beautiful armor. I'm not disparaging in the slightest some of the stuff. This video is really focused on the fact that not all of us can drop 30 grand on a new kit out of nowhere. Yeah. I don't know if I ever could spend that much money on armor. Yeah. But just because you don't have that kind of money doesn't mean you can't play.
Absolutely.
So, ballpark, what do you think you've spent total on your harness?
My harnesses I'm wearing it now or overall? With trial and error?
Well, overall, like if you going out on the field at Long Point or at a tournament or something, how much is that kit?
I think it's right around $1,000 I've probably spent. A little bit more than that probably, but it's about $1,000, and that was over the course of a year and a half that I got that together.
And how exactly were you able to do some of that cheap too?
A lot of what I did to get it that cheap was do it myself. Getting the Lord of Battle stuff and making it work, figuring out how to improvise with it. Not improvise, but how to modify it in a way that would make it sit correctly, that would make it a better piece of armor for me. One of the things I've learned over the course of getting into armor is how to work leather a little bit, how to pattern things, how to sew, and how to manipulate metal enough to make it work.
Now, I'll say my trick to this was to train in the art for over a decade, become an instructor, develop a whole bunch of students, and then eventually find students that could do all that stuff Luke just said, and then get them to do it for me. That works well, but if you want to do it now and not wait until 2030 something, there are some other ways. That's what we're going to go over. So we're going to start off by going over some of what goes under the armor, the gambesons, the padding, that kind of thing to get you going. Then we'll go into limb armor, legs, arms, gauntlets, then chest pieces, and then helmets. So let's start talking about under armor. So one of the important things to think about before you start getting into a lot of armor is what you're going to wear under the armor. And you can't just wear a t-shirt and shorts. It's not going to, for one, it's not going to look right, and two, it might actually be kind of uncomfortable with things pinching and whatever. Mm-hmm. So obviously there is the fully historic way to go by getting, a linen shirt, depending on the time period of your armor, either choses and brays or hosen or something like this, and a pourpoint and a linen coat or a wool coat or something. But again, we're talking about what to do for saving cost.
Saving cost, just getting into it.
Mm-hmm. Now, sometimes when I've done events or things, when I want to look pretty, I will wear full historically accurate garb underneath everything, shoes and leggings and everything to look more the part. But
Absolutely.
when we're doing the, your monthly armor practice...
I'm not going to wear $80 hosen to get an armor bite and have a huge hole in them.
Yep.
No, that's... I will go for, like, the $10, like, what do you call them?
What are those, jogging tights or something?
Something like that.
Yeah. I got you beat on that. How much those were like $10 or something?
$10 or something.
I got these. They're actually, they're yoga pants, but they were, I want to say, $4.99 at CVS. And they have them in black and maroon, and I got gray. I got a couple pairs. They're relatively comfortable.
They're comfortable enough, and they look, 10 yards away from an onlooker at a deed. You wouldn't be able to tell.
You wouldn't see the difference.
Exactly.
You're going to see just little bits of color in the openings on the armor, depending on what kind of harness you're wearing. So a little bit of color is kind of nice, but not so much that, no one's going to see the material, really.
Yeah.
But, something like this. Again, I paid less than $5 for this. He paid $10 for those. If we're fighting in them in an event and we get a nice little armor hickey and something rips on here, who cares? We throw them out, we buy another one.
Yeah.
I actually have a pair of very nice Revival clothing linen choses that are... I did not know this when I first started getting into this, and I was very happy about my new choses. And I put my leg harness on over them, and it chewed the hell out of them. So that was, I think, like $70 worth of linen clothing just gone in about 2 hours of fighting. So ever since then, cheap. So after that, in terms of upper body, I'll sometimes wear just a regular t-shirt or something just for sweat, or some Under Armour type material just for like the wicking. It makes a difference when you're doing a long-term event.
Yep.
But what's the next level of chest protection for historic soft kit?
Soft kit would be the gambeson. On the super cheap end, you can go with the Lord of Battles one, and with a little bit of work, it works great.
Pull it over this way. Yeah. Now, what can you tell us about this?
This one with it's buttoned down. You can see the original color more or less on the inside, and after wearing it with mail, you can see it turns this nice historic gray, I guess. I've used this to support my arm harness, and I've used it to support my leg harness at different times. I recently made a new piece of kit, so I won't be using it for leg harness anymore. But I don't know if you can see it. I did some nice eyelets here and sewed them in, so that way I could suspend my leg harness off of it, because I ordered this. When I ordered this, I went through, I'm not going to say their name, because I'm sure they didn't appreciate me with the amount of returns I did. But I got
they're going to get mentioned a few times, probably.
Probably. So. But I ordered, this in 3 different sizes. I ended up going with the small, and I ordered the 15th century one from Lord of Battles as well in a couple different sizes. And I put them all on and tried them on. And what's important to remember if you're going to suspend your leg harness from them is that you want it to cinch around the waist, so you want it to be pretty tight, so that way it's not load-bearing your leg harness on your shoulders, it's putting it on your hips. So when I got this, it was about the same weight, but it was a very cinching fit, and it did loosen up a bit, but not enough to adjust how anything really worked. But
yeah, so this is how much?
This is about
$100, and then you did the work on this to add the points yourself.
Yeah, I did leather on the arms to suspend your arm harness, and I put some eyelets in the legs so I could suspend my leg harness, and after that's the base layer for my armor.
And this moves pretty well, correct?
Moves fine. I've had 0 problems with mobility.
Okay, so that's one example. If you want to go a little higher up from there, Revival clothing. I'm going to put a bunch of links in the description below to some of the different stuff, at least some of the the top websites for purchasing some of these. But if you want to go a little higher end, this is the Revival clothing cotton gambeson. It's nice and heavy. It's a little thicker than the linen gambeson from Lord of Battles, It's got nice buttons. I put some arming points on this for different kit myself, the same kind of thing. But this is got a little more padding and a little more freedom of movement in the sleeves based on the cut, the sleeve material here. The catches, the cotton gambeson is, I want to say, about $250 from them.
That's about right.
So it's a little bit more money, but if you want something that's a little nicer, the stitching, I think,
the stitching is much higher quality. After a year and a half of that one, 2 years in that one, it's starting to fray everywhere, especially on the eyelets for the buttons and stuff. This one still looks immaculate.
Yeah.
So
to be fair, this is my loaner / backup gambeson, depending on the kit I'm using. So if you want to go a little higher end, but it's not crazy expensive, you can go with, from Revival Clothing, also a linen gambeson. The nice thing is the cotton one is like $100 cheaper, but it only comes in black. You can't get any other colors. The linen gambeson, a little more expensive, but you do have a little more options when it comes to colors. They have a natural cotton or a natural linen, the red, the black, green, blue. They have a whole selection. So the thing that I've noticed myself wearing this is the cotton doesn't breathe as well as the linen. When it's just an hour of some practice, it's not a big deal. But when I've done events in the summertime, 80 degrees, humid, the linen makes a huge difference.
Absolutely.
Now, again, just like we said with the other one, the stitching on the Revival Clothing gambesons is nice and solid, and this is similar to Luke's Very Dirty. That's because I've had this gambeson for, I want to say this one's about 12 years old now.
It's still going strong, huh?
Yep. Yeah, I want to say probably just shy of 12, because I think it was 2008 I got this gambeson. So, again, little bit more of a money, a little bit higher cost to invest at the beginning. Not a crazy amount, like
but
ballpark like $350 or so. But it's over a decade, and other than being a little on the ripe side, it's perfectly functional.
Opposed to mine, where in next year or two, I'm probably going to need to get another one or a better quality one, just because.
But it got you started, correct?
Absolutely, got me started. For $100, I had a functioning arming garment that I could suspend all of my harness off of. So
one of the things that we'll see sometimes is there's cheap ways to get into stuff, like getting that cheaper gambeson. Maybe it's not the best for long-term use, but it's enough to get you going, and when you're buying enough kit overall, you're buying so many different pieces to get yourself started. Sometimes you can save a little bit here, get the cheaper one for now, and then upgrade later on. Now that, in a few years when this starts to really go, you could go to the linen Revival and get a nice color or something like that, nice red to match your tights there and something. But yeah, so that is what we can do for Under Armour. So we've talked about what goes under the armor. Now let's start talking about limb armor as we work our way in. So Luke, what's your leg harness setup like?
my leg harness is made up of two things: the Lord of Battle's greaves and some secondhand thing from Eastern Europe.
Now, did you have to do any modifications or anything to those to get them going?
Yeah, the Lord of Battle's ones, when they come in, their straps are... The lower strap's okay. They have them backwards. Traditionally, you see the buckles on the inside of the leg. They come with them on the outside for some reason, so I ended up having to redo those. And also, on the greaves, you generally want to have the strap above your calf to hold it up, so that way it's not... Gravity's not just pushing it into the top of your foot.
Yeah, little note, a lot of the armor tends to want to sit right at the valley of a muscle, not on the peak of a muscle. So the calf, the bicep, the forearm, whatever, it always wants to, the strapping on the armor always wants to be where that part of the muscle doesn't push out as much when it flexes, because otherwise it gets very uncomfortable.
So, yeah. So I redid the straps on these and just with a little bit of leather and just moved them up. I don't know. So there's the original hole here and moved them up, I don't know, 2-3 inches to where they would sit properly. And that's one of those really simple mods you can do to make the armor actually functional and not terrible where it's sitting on the top of your foot and making you hurt. And that was, I needed a Dremel to get the rivets out, and then the 15-pound anvil from like Harbor Freight at a Baltine.
Yeah.
I mean, it was not an expensive adventure to
Simple
go.
rivets, basic leatherworking.
Yeah.
And it looks like, from my experience with some of their stuff, you were able to even reuse the buckles from the original armor, but on your new leather.
Exactly.
Because Lord of Battle they do a nice job on their buckles, of all things.
I've actually, on Friends Kits, I've helped them with. I bought the actual stock Lord of Battle's buckles and used those because they function pretty well. And
they function pretty well. They're inexpensive, and also the convenient thing about that is if you have Lord of Battle's gear and your buckles get effed up in a fight, you can then just go and buy a new one for $1.79 or something like that.
For like $1 a piece. It's really reasonable as far as buckles go.
Very practical. Thinking about not only how the armor is going to protect you, but how after the armor protects you, you can fix it later, because it's not uncommon for rivets to pop and for leather to tear and things to dent, and it's how much we're willing to accommodate that. I mean, a knight back in the 15th century, if he went to battle and his armor got all smashed up,
he'd have his squire go do it. Or
his armor smith would just redo it for him. It wasn't a big deal. It's like, if you're driving a Ferrari and you get a speeding ticket, you're not really that concerned about the cost of that. Yeah,
you're driving a Ferrari.
Whatever, I'm having fun.
Driving a Ferrari, you're not doing your own maintenance on it.
Yeah, exactly. So, that's your kit. Yeah. Now, the story with your legs. This is an interesting talking point to bring up, because one of the things that I found pretty convenient over the years, especially with nowadays with Bohurt and Battle of Nations and all these other armored leagues becoming a thing, there's more armor out there. And because there's more armor out there, there's more smiths out there, which means the prices are a little more competitive. But as a great benefit, we see a lot more on a used market. So some of the older people used to go on forums, but a lot of stuff now, if you go on Facebook, there's different used armor sites with SCA, BOTN, all these different organizations have kind of sub pages that are just used armor, and sometimes you can get amazing deals. So like your cuisses there, I got those. I think somebody was selling them for something like $50, and they were a little rusty, and they're not the greatest quality, but I wasn't sure about the size, but at the price I was like, okay, I'm going to pick those up. So I did, and then I tried them on, and they are about the size of my arm. So I'm a little, we're sitting down right now, but I am a little bigger than Luke. But I got it for so cheap, I just turned around and brought it to fencing class one week and said, okay, who does this fit on? So a lot of times getting that hand-me-down type, I think I basically paid me like $50 or whatever it was, and not a big deal. And so keep your eyes out if you're looking to get into kit on getting into some of the used stuff out there. Again, you might not. It might need some repair. It might need new leather. It might need some polishing. But if it's going to save you, a few $100 compared to getting it new, it might be worth it.
Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with having to drill an extra hole in here. And then, in fact, when I got it, it had no upper leather, and I need to redo this one to be a more historic all the way around, so I can put more than one point on it. But it just had the two holes. I think these two holes, and I just pointed through there, and eventually I went to the leather, and now I'm going to go for a little bit more historical. But, I mean, for 3 rivets and a piece of leather, it works amazing, and I've had no problems with it.
Excellent. Okay, so my leg harness, I've actually recently, sort of in the used thing, one of our training partners for harness and instructor with the Exiles, Jason Cook, just like I did with Luke's current leg harness, Jason bought some leg harness from somebody in Eastern Europe or something and fitted on him, and it was a little bit too big. A little bit on the big side. But I got thick thighs, so it fit on me almost perfectly. So sometimes, you may take a gamble on used armor, but it works out sometimes.
You can pass it to someone else in the community. Now more people are in harness, and that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, it's a little manipulative, but sometimes if you take somebody, you're like, oh, maybe you'll do armor someday. Well, here's a helmet and a pair of gauntlets. Oh wow. Well, I guess I have to get armor now.
You just need a breastplate now.
Yeah, exactly. So you sucker some people in that way. So I thought I'd also talk about a little bit about some of my older leg harness that was a little more inexpensive that got me going. The first part for me was similar to Luke. I have greaves, which are just half greaves.
Gutter greaves.
Some people call them half-case greaves. Higher end harness is going to have full case greaves, and if you're ever seeing that, if you're not sure what that means that it wraps fully around. By the shape of people's legs, the lower leg, the calf, you can't get off the rack really.
You gotta get really lucky to have it fit you correctly.
And it's one of the pieces that is going to be the most uncomfortable if it does not fit correctly.
Yeah.
So the inexpensive way to get started is by going with something like this that is only the front half. So you have the vulnerability on the back half of the calf, but it's a compromise. These are actually from, I believe, Windrose Armory. I honestly am not sure of the price. They were a gift from Christian Tobler years ago, but the nice thing about this is they're stainless steel.
So,
but
easy maintenance.
Yes, and that just covers up my lower. Then, for the cuisse, the upper leg, I have from Get Dressed for Battle a padded cuisse. So unlike Luke, where you have steel on the upper leg, I just have, on my older kit here, I just had padding. But it's similar to the gambeson, that thick, overstitched. This one is trimmed with a little bit of leather for wear. I bought this right around the same time of that linen gambeson. So I've had this for well over a decade at this point. It actually came with originally
explain the circle here.
Yeah, it came originally with a leather, like a curboil, whatever you say it, that hardened leather kneecap piece.
Oh, is it just a leather piece?
Yeah, it was just a leather piece. Yanush has the same legs, but his have a steel piece.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of.
Yes, they're actually the same model from Get Dressed for Battle, but they have a leather and I got the I didn't want to use that for the knee. I wanted a different knee piece, so I removed the leather patch for the knee, and I stitched an arming point on, so I can slip this on my leg, like so. And then I have just an individual knee. This is from Windrose Armory, which they do predominantly SCA stuff, but they make some good quality things. A lot of their stuff is stainless, which is, it's not historically accurate, and I know some people like to, oh, well, it's not historical, blah, blah. You know what? I don't feel like polishing every inch of my armor every time.
It gets a little...
Yeah. And eventually when I get enough students to have them all, and old enough where I get them to do it for me, I'm just going to feel guilty when I make them do it all for me. So I like having a few pieces of stainless here and there. But yeah, then I just simply take that and put that over the knee. This points on. Then I have the greave underneath here. And it's, fairly historically accurate and functional, which is the most important part. If I take a poleaxe to this, you're going to be able to walk home afterwards. That's the important part. Okay, so that's legs. Now, Luke, what do you use for your arm harness?
Arm harness, couple different options, but one that's always the same is these nice, I believe, Eastern European, previously SCA owner arm harness. Has the full cannon on the lower and half cannon on the top, and they work fine. These were, I think, $150 from one of the used sites. I'm not the first owner, but they are very nice arm harness. Actually, the tolerance on the lames is really tight. It's actually really impressive. You don't need that, but
that was totally on purpose.
The only modification I had to make to those was putting on a second strap to the cannon. Originally it was a pin, and it was just a tension fit with the pin, so you just squeeze it together, get the pin through. That wasn't holding very well. It would flop open on me, which was just terrible. So with 2 rivets and a buckle from Tandy, thanks Tandy, I think Jesse Beakley helped me with that one. That was it, and now it is perfect, and I have no complaints with them.
And aesthetically, I like the elbow on that little bit of protection there, that flare.
The nice wing, it's nice.
Got a nice shape to it.
It does. A little bit later than the early transitional armor I have, but I don't think anyone's called me on it yet.
Yeah, not yet.
Not yet.
Eventually. There's some of this that, yes, okay, we want our armor to look as historically accurate as possible, but when it comes to, if the option is perfectly historically accurate and 5 people on the tournament field versus some wiggle room for a few decades worth of armor but functional and 50 people on the battlefield on the tournament field, I am much more on the side of having more people out there able to fight than, putting that price, that barrier of it needs to be exactly 1472 and specifically Milanese. It can't even be any other style. It has to be no, have some wiggle room with some of this stuff.
Absolutely. And most people are they'd rather see you fighting in harness than they would be like, I have yet to run into that guy and hope I never do.
Yeah, there used to be more online. I feel like now that more of the HEMA community seems to be getting involved in armor, there seems to be less of that old crew that was very uptight about perfectionist with their armor.
It has to be within a 10-year range of X date, where it's like, yes, that's nice. But
it is very nice, don't get me wrong.
I love seeing good kit and historically accurate kit, but there's a point where it's like, there's a safety thing, and then there's not safety. Like, that, it happens.
Yeah. Okay, so as for my arm harness, I have the, once again, Lord of Battles. This is their Milanese style arms. It fits a little loose, obviously, over not gambeson, but this has 3 straps. I got one across my forearm, one across the elbow to kind of hold things in place, and then just like I said in previously, just above the bicep, I have the last strap, and then on the back side of the arm is a leather tab to attach points to my gambeson. So these straps keep it against my arm tight, and then the leather on the back here actually holds it up, supporting the weight of the armor instead of being on the leather and pushing down on my wrist. It keeps the weight a little more on my shoulders.
That is, I missed that point.
Proper armor should be weighted so that it's holding the weight on your torso a little more on the shoulders, on the hips, not so much on the joints and things. If it's not fitted right, it's going to do that, but some of the modifications I know you've done with your kit have been that comfort level.
Moving a point an inch or 2 back so that way it's not sitting on your wrist after it loosens up.
Mm-hmm. Because we've all, again, had that too, especially when the adrenaline's going and you don't really even realize that it's not sitting right.
And the next day you're like, why is this hurt? And why is there
this giant bruise on my leg?
I don't understand. No one hit me there.
Yeah. But the nice thing about these Milanese arms is it'll lead into the next part of what we're talking about, which is gauntlets. So this style of arm harness has that vambrace, the forearm piece that comes down here, and then paired with it is something with an hourglass-shaped cuff, which gives me this ability to move. So I have all the mobility here in my hand. And you can see there are some openings here, but the gambeson comes down, and the end of the cuff on the gambeson comes down and covers that, so there is no exposed skin. I'm wearing just a t-shirt right now, so. But, the Milanese arms through Lord of Battles are pretty practical and functional, and these simple hourglass, I know, I believe they've changed. I'll go over mine and then talk about yours. But these Lord of Battles gauntlets, there's some tape and stuff on here because I need to get one of my leather working students to do some repairs on this for me. Yeah, I know. Robin's gonna do this one for me. I made you do other stuff, but I believe so. These showed up on the market probably several years ago. At this point, they started showing up, and they were so cheap. We ended up getting a pair or two, and we're like, wow, these are actually pretty nice. The downside was the inside here was a little overbuilt, so we actually found that if you take it to a grinding wheel, you can actually cut out some of the material here because, again, most of the people watching this video are going to be probably fighters. You want to be able to feel your weapon in your hand, and when the metal is overbuilt and it comes across and the haft of your poleaxe or the grip on your sword is pressed on the metal, you lose that disconnect. You lose that sense of feeling.
Yeah, and that's super important.
Very
especially
important.
in harness.
So, with a little modifications, we just simply ground out the inside of the gauntlet a little bit, and now it works perfectly. Other than, again, this is going to happen. Leather is going to tear, and rivets are going to pop. But the point of armor is that the armor pops, and not your finger itself.
Yep.
So what about your gauntlets, Luke?
My gauntlets, they were originally $100, and they're from Amazon. The Laurel City site has a link to them. I think that link is still to the correct gauntlets because Indian armor on Amazon is notorious for product switching. Not all of them, but a lot of them. You'll order something and then something terrible shows up and you have to return it because it's just not at all what the pictures were.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately for me, these things are exactly what they said they would be, and they are. These are the first gauntlets I bought for harness, and they're still working 2 years in.
It looks like I can see some repair work done on some of that.
There's been a lot of repair work done on this. So, you'll see some tape here that's functional for not chewing up grips of swords. The way that they're done, the corners were sharp and it would tear some of the leathers on my swords, which was sad. But
so that's not a repair so much as it's just a preventative from tarnishing up your stuff.
Yeah, I could do it out of leather, but this is way easier. So there's that. Originally, they were gloved with
duct tape's historically accurate, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's always been there.
Yeah.
But originally they had the welding gloves for the palms, like the big black fit anybody kind of gloves, and I ended up I tore a hole in one of those, or just one that seems pop because they're cheap. So I ended up going to the hardware store and just getting a pair of gloves that fit my hands, and I re-sewed them onto there with these signature yellow work gloves. So they fit and work pretty great, but you can see some of the things that happen is there's no second lame that comes down that rides the rider lame. So they're pointed up there and you can see the gap there. I haven't ever broken a finger in my HEMA career as of yet. Knock on wood. I'll do it later. But they've been great, and for $100 and a $7 pair of gloves and some time with a leather needle and wax thread, I cannot complain. One thing I wish I could fix, or wish I did, was connect it with a piece of leather on the inside of the cuff to this glove to give it a more historic feel. Instead of having to go down and fish for the glove, it would just plop on, and that's how they originally did them. But again, for $100,
for cheap, for getting into armor, getting started,
you can't beat it. It's great. It works well enough as long as you trust the people you're sparring with, and that just goes for not being overly aggressive, where it's like they're actually trying to kill you.
Well, I mean,
you've tried.
I've tried, but
I'm still here.
Yeah, you've made it.
So they work fine.
I'm Luke. I won a medal at a tournament and doing armored fighting. I got to make sure you put you in your place every once in a while.
I did one thing right once. They don't mean anything. I just did well one day. But yeah, they work great.
Excellent. So we talked about our lower arm, elbow, and coming up to the tricep, upper arm here.
Yeah.
What about shoulders?
Shoulders, I have two. The first one I got was the Lord of Battles, whatever they call this. It's huge. It is for someone who is much, much bigger than I am. I actually removed the lame from this because it was too long and having it pointed properly, I couldn't lift my arm because it would lock out against the wing on my lower arm harness. And it was just kind of funny. So I ended up taking that out and it works okay. It is very big.
It looks pretty good, though. The lines on it aren't bad.
As a piece of armor, yeah, it looks good. It's just meant for someone who is, I don't know, like Schwarzenegger-sized arms.
Yeah.
Not whatever kind of arms I have.
I have something very similar, basically the same kind of armor. Actually, hold that up for me for a second again. We'll compare this. This is the Lord of Battles, and this is the Winter Tree Craft. Unfortunately, Eric Schmidt at Winter Tree Craft has officially retired. He's still doing some small pieces, but he's not doing armor like he used to. But this was made by him based on the Battle of Visby survival pieces. So this and my coat of plates were both made by him with the designs and done based on the exact measurements of some stuff from the archaeological dig site. So you can kind of see here the difference in size between the Repro, which is much more historically accurate, and the Lord of Battles knockoff version.
Yeah. It works. But
so you have another option, too.
I also have these smaller, I don't know what you call them, rondelle kind of deals.
Yeah.
I forget what they actually call them. I'm sure they have a real name, and it's
I've
probably
heard
French.
simple spalders, too.
Simple spalder, and it just goes up here, and I like them because they look historically accurate. If you go look at effigies, you see them all over the place. Same thing with those, but these are a little bit earlier because they're simpler. There's a third option we didn't talk about, which is just not having hard protection and just using mail.
It is an option. I don't like it. Aesthetically, it looks wrong to me. It just...
I was gonna say, like, I think in Fiore's manuscripts, he takes off the spalders on his...
Which is why it looks wrong to me. It's in Fiore.
I can't argue with that.
No, we love our Fiore brothers and sisters.
Of course, but I like having a little bit of protection there.
You want the shiny. I mean,
It's
there
true.
is a certain part of armor that is not just functional, but you want to look really cool. When you go out to an event and like kids walk by like, oh, knights, this is so awesome. You know, you want that response from people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is not related to shoulder armor, but just another part about armor. Get a silly hat. You're going to need a good silly hat. I have my Robin Hood hat. I have some like kind of chef hat with a cool pattern. You need a silly hat in order to harness properly.
Silly hats. Okay, so we've talked about arm harness, and you brought this up. I don't have, other than this, I don't really have anything to display for it, but one thing that we should talk about is mail.
Yeah.
Mail is one of those difficult things to get into when it comes to harness because there really isn't a cheap solution. Okay, so there is a cheap solution, which is butted mail. But butted mail is going to fall apart once you're fighting. If you're doing a play, if it's just for a Ren Fair show, demonstration, whatever, sure, it's going to be fine. But you don't want butted mail for fighting because it's going to get torn apart.
Someone's going to land a thrust, or even on my butted mail, I've had my breastplate or other piece of armor tear one of the links because it happens.
Yep.
And with butted, it's going to be so much easier to do that.
So unfortunately, the only way to really get mail is to properly get mail in the riveted set. There are companies out of Pakistan like Lord of Battles, like Get Dressed for Battle, some of these places that have some relatively inexpensive mail shirts you can get. But again, you're still looking at anywhere from $3 to $4, maybe a little more, $100 for a mail shirt. I tell people that it's something that you want, not only for historical accuracy, but protection. Yeah. But I suggest people buy other pieces of their kit first. Unless you have the capital up front to get it all at once, I put mail at the as a lower priority. Because if you have the gambeson, you have the arms, you have a breastplate, you have even a mail aventail underneath the helmet, You can be without a mail shirt. You are a little more vulnerable. You will feel it if you get a point placed on you.
Absolutely,
But you can get by without it in the short term.
Because I think that's probably the single most expensive single piece that is the most expensive on my kit is the mail. All the other pieces are pretty easy to do, but the mail is the one that's always going to be the most expensive, I think.
But it also, again, looks really cool.
Oh yeah,
when you
absolutely.
See the mail.
When you put on the mail, it just ties it all together, and it looks really good. And you have just that extra level of protection in your joints. It's just, yeah.
Oh yeah. So mail, if you can afford it, great, go for it. Get dressed for battle, Lord of Battles. Some of these places have some mail shirts you can get sort of off the rack that are rough fitted. Usually they have kind of a small and a large size. So figure out about where you are in that range. And a lot of these things, what you can do is they have the rivet tool, basically like a set of specialty pliers, and you can get a bag of
the
loose rivets and the little the rings and the rivets. So you get the one off the rack closest to the right size for you, and then you can get some tin snips or something and cut it and basically retailor it to fit you a little better.
Absolutely. And
so again, saving money as compared to if you do go and you get a custom fitted kit and you're paying 6 figures, which would be awesome. But then you're going to have custom fitted mail. But again, if you can't go that far, but you got your tax return in, or you got your COVID-19 stimulus check in, then you can get a kind of a one size fits most mail shirt, and then maybe spend some time doing some custom tailoring and do some reshaping to it to make it work a little better. One thing I will say, as just more of a functional tip, what helps is if you wear just a simple belt. If you have a mail shirt that is a little too big, because that's what mine is, because my mail shirt was more size for me when I was significantly larger. I've lost a lot of weight, so it doesn't quite fit as well. Yeah. It's unfortunate, but for good reasons it doesn't fit well. But anyway, what I do is I wear just actually a cheater modern belt over the mail just to cinch it at my waist when I put that on, and then I put my chest cover over that so no one sees it, but it holds the armor or holds the mail against me a little tighter, so I get less of that waving effect. So what happens is when you have armor on that's too big for you, it doesn't fit right. When you go to move, you step forward, your armor doesn't stop, and then it moves out, and then it swings back into you. So you get this wave action every step, and when you're getting hit and you're getting that, it's no good.
It gets a little tiring.
A little bit.
bit.
Track 1 is don't get hit. So we've talked about Under Armour. We've talked about limbs and hands. We talked a little bit about mail. Now let's talk about one of the main components, which is chest protection or breastplates.
Yep. This is it, and it's $80 or $90 value of the Lord of Battles breastplate. Looks pretty good. The most ahistorical part is probably the blade catcher or whatever you call it, because it's a single piece that is just
kind of stuck on there.
Yeah, the good news is that when I have my Aventail on, you don't see it, but it still does its job great. And one of the parts it's lacking in is the back protection. It's only the upper chest. It's like from your natural waist up is where it has protection from. And I got no real complaints about it.
And what style is this? This is a
this is like
Cherbourg style.
Globos
breastplate, if you look it up online. Which is why if you hold it to the side, Luke, you can see it's got kind of this pot-bellied shape to it. Not because the people wearing it would have giant pot bellies, but because when a blow comes in, it wants to veer off. And then with this, veer off away from the face, not the face. In fact, I can actually see scratches in your armor here.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know, you probably can't see it on the camera, but I can see scratches from where something has come up and skittered off into the arm.
Off to the side. It's like, that's much better than having it come up under the Aventail or into my face.
So this is the Lord of Battles Globos breastplate. And again, what'd you say? It was like $90 or so?
$90. And
There's also there's a similar one through GDFB, Get Dressed for Battle. That's a slightly later style. It's not
like the two-piece kind.
Yeah, it has a little bit more of a flare at the bottom.
15th century.
It's another cheap one. I think that one is even cheaper. I think that one's closer to $60.
Oh,
but the nice thing is it comes down a little lower. There's a compromise there because of where this sits. This actually, if you hold it up to you there, it sits a little higher, so it's a little more towards the natural waist versus the hips, which means that you get a little bit more movement out of it.
I can bend at the waist still when I'm in my harness.
Yes, which is kind of important, especially once we get into the wrestling and things in armor.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, that's an option. But you're going to have, whenever you have something like this where it's a full plate, some limitations on movement and things. I personally prefer the earlier styles like this, which is the Battle of Visby style coat of plates, as compared to Luke's, where it's one solid piece. This is actually multiple overlapping plates that literally wrap around my body. So the nice thing is all of these are attached to leather, so all of this is movable. This one is like my Spalders. This is actually from Winter Tree Craft. It was one of the last ones I guess he made because I kind of twisted his arm. I'm sorry, Eric. Thank you. But it's like, come on, my friend. I live like 2 states away. I can come hang out with you. I'll bring beer, and I got him to make it for me. But there are other sites that make coat of plates. I like them because I honestly like the look too. Just the general style. Sometimes you can get the dagging, whatever kind of leather you want. Windrose Armory, like I said, we've mentioned them before.
Yeah.
They make a coat of plates that is right around the $300 range. I had one of those for years, and really liked it. And it was sort of a cheater because it was nice leather, nice brass rivets, but it was aluminum plates instead of steel.
Super nice,
super
and
lightweight, not historically accurate, but when you're at an event all day, and it saves a little bit of the weight on you.
Oh yeah.
But the neat thing about coats of plates that I've seen is I've never done it. I'm gonna wait to stop making noise. Okay, now that I've stopped making noise, I've never done it myself, but I've seen several times online over the years smiths offering coat of plate kits. So you can buy from the smith the plates itself, but assemble it on your own. They'll give you the directions, so that way you save a considerable chunk of money. But then you go to Tandy Leather, you go to some place online, something like this, and you get the leather you need. You make it to the size that you need. You add whatever, you can go, bright red. You can go standard kind of cliche black. You could do whatever you want with that. If you know someone or you're a leather worker, you can do maybe probably some kind of fancy stitching work or something. There's even some historically that were done with linen and wool and things like that too. So you can save money if you have the practical skills and or time, and find some armor smiths that will make the plates themselves for you, and then you can do the manual labor yourself to actually assemble it into a coat of plates.
Which would be pretty cool. I'd be into that kind of project.
That's your next project then. Go for Visby style.
Yeah, I was gonna say with a lot of the Boohurt or whatever the other
Bowherd or
Battle of the Nation people or whatever, they seem to have a lot of smiths that are offering the 15th century style coat of plates or the Visby style coat of plates now too, which are...
I will stop you right there because I know someone is going to make comments. 15th style is going to be a brigandine, which is much smaller plates.
It's just much smaller plates generally.
And the earlier Visby style, which is more late 14th century, is larger plates, and that is what's considered to be more coat of plates.
Yeah, and a brigandine should have that nice waist to it, but I mean, it's what they're calling it is what they're calling it, man.
There's a lot of stuff between coats of plates, brigandines, and lamellar. There's like
a lot of weird
crossover.
But
yeah.
I mean,
So don't comment.
Whatever
Just
you want.
I'll put Luke's email below, and you can just send
an
him
email.
stuff directly. Yeah.
Tell me the difference. Oh God.
Okay, so the last and honestly probably the most important
Yeah, that's where your brains are.
helmets, because you can take a shot to the arm and be unhappy and walk away, but shots to the head little more important.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of options when it comes to helmets. Unfortunately, with a lot of the off the rack type armors, there's a lot of bad options out there.
Off the rack sallets are really tough, especially when they're a sallet and a bever and they're separate pieces where they don't lock together. Really tough. I would opt not to do that.
So a lot of times that 15th century style Gothic type sallet and bever combo is not a good look to go for when you're buying off the rack, because stuff won't always fit together perfectly without serious modifications.
Yeah.
So that's why what we do is we tend to go for, especially people that are getting started for cheap, look at earlier style harness.
Mm-hmm.
Look at more of the transitional, the hound skulls, the clap visors, the great helms. This is ways that you can sort of get away with a little bit earlier stuff. It still looks good, but the off-the-rack options usually are a little more functional.
Absolutely.
So I thought I'd say first, I had this one. I don't know if it's still available, but they show up every once in a while, at least used. This is actually, of all things, museum replicas. This is one of those old museum replicas. This was a gift from Christian many years ago to me, that he actually has its the other one, and this has a nice kind of brass trim on it, and of all things, it's also stainless. I wear a padded coif underneath it, which is basically the same material as a gambeson, but like a hood version.
Mm-hmm.
And it has pretty good visibility, pretty good breathability, but it's a little heavy.
Yeah.
So it definitely has some heft to it. The only downside is, well, the upside is the brass looks real pretty on that helmet. The downside is brass is much softer than stainless steel, and brass is not as hard as my friend's gauntlets. Mm-hmm. So there's
some
when you close it.
Punching.
This is what happens when you close into grappling range without actually controlling your opponent's arms.
Yeah, some Morchlogs get by and someone gets punched in the helmet.
Yeah, but it looks really cool, so I left it there.
It does.
So, but this is a great helm. This is a much earlier style. In fact, it's a little bit on the earlier style between my coat of plates and the padded cuisses and the great helm. This is sort of pushing the bounds on what it is, but I try to at least justify it with myself that if I were to travel back to the 70s right now in a pair of jeans and a shirt like this, how would people from literally 50 years ago, would they look at me and go, oh my God, you're a spaceman? Or would they just go, oh, that's a weird cut of those jeans?
Probably the later. Hopefully.
So there's historically accurate, but I think there is also, I try to think that there is a little bit of wiggle room in any sort of fashion, whether it's modern or whether it's historical. There's always the peak of the fashion trend, but then there's also I saw a thing online recently for an ad for like the Jinko jeans from when I was in like high school. You were probably in elementary school.
I mean, I had Jinko jeans. Come on.
Yeah. but I remember when I was in school in the 90s, it was like the bigger the jeans, the more respect you got at high school kind of thing. It was I don't get it. Yeah. But they're like coming back into fashion now. So fashion is weird.
It is.
It is.
One other point I would make about that helmet, for if you're good at some of the Dita arms, is the eyes might be too big, but you could get perf plate and either rivet it or have someone who weld it in, and that would make the helm legal for that. I think that's the only other real point I would have about that. It would. Do you have any other? You said you wear the coif, whatever, underneath the padded coif, but do you have any other protection in there that you've added?
There is a little bit of I forgot where it was, but foam padding kind of to help out with a little extra suspension, a little shock absorption in there. And when I wear this, I also wear a gorget underneath one of that guy's gorgets. You don't have it right there.
I didn't bring it.
Yeah, I have one somewhere. I have it downstairs. But I wear that gorget, that leather and metal underneath to get that extra throat protection, because this doesn't have an aventail built in like yours does, which, now that we've explained mine, let's talk about yours and your fancy aventail.
All right. So this is the Hound Skull from, is this GDFB or Lord of Battles?
That's Lord of Battles.
This is Lord of Battles. This is the Lord of Battles Hound Skull helm. It has removable visor, which is nice.
Actually, as a talking point, it's very cool to have a removable visor, not only for if you're at a deed and you want to breathe or eat or something, but you also still have stuff to do. But it also is super great if you're just doing some training and drilling, or if you're, say, you're at a demonstration somewhere where you're not actually fighting, you're just practicing some skills, or you're just walking around and you're trying to impress people. Then you can pull that visor off, and I mean, even with the mustache right there, you look you look like an effigy right now, Luke.
Good, and that was the goal.
Yeah.
With this one, it originally comes without the other side of the face mask drilled out. I did that so I could have. I don't plan on doing jousting, so I was fine with drilling the other side out for visibility and more breaths. So it you get some more of the peripherals down there. If you ever were in a bassinet, you understand about the importance of peripherals, because your line of sight is
very
not
limited.
Great.
Very limited.
Fueling comes into play a lot, but with this helm, it's pretty good off the rack. I have some, I think it's like some other kind of foam, some military helmet foam in there that just attaches with Velcros. I have a couple of those in there just to make sure it seats right and has a little bit more
Shock absorption.
A little bit shock absorption. It also comes with a pretty decent suspension system, so it's sitting there and it's linen or cotton, I'm not sure which, but it will take a blow, and it's kind of like a construction helmet where the suspension will give, not the helmet. Some of the other modifications I've made was I put a push pin in so I can lift my visor when I want to. It's not the best helm because it's not the perfect shape. This is a little bit tall.
Aesthetically, it comes a little bit...
It's a little bit pointy. So the helmet comes up and you can bring it about there. I'll show you in a minute when I put the helmet or the faceplate back on. But the aventail, I did the leather on it. I made that. That was fun.
That came out really nice, by the way, on yours.
Yeah, thank
you.
you.
Stitching, the color, and everything on that.
Yeah.
I like the little details like this. Again, this is customizing stuff. We now have in our armored practice group, basically half the people have this helmet in one form or another. So doing this where you have this nice deep red on yours, Luke, it makes it real easy to, when we have a line of these all on the table and we're grabbing our kit,
makes it really easy to know which
makes it stand out.
I think I put the same kind of aventail and aventail liner on all of them. Most of them. But that just really changed the helmet to put a good aventail on here, and I did it historically where it comes up to the lower lip pretty much, where a thrust to the chin, if it were to happen, it would be caught on the aventail there instead of taking it on the chin. When you see people, that's
not rigid protection.
It's not rigid protection. I still wear an aventail.
Nothing. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's especially with the little bit of padding and the chainmail, they have to move that stuff first, and that's usually enough for me to be like, all right, yeah, that's your point.
Yep.
Good point.
Yep. So this is the one. This is actually the one that I bought not too long ago, and again, you can either do modifications yourself, or you can find someone else that can do modifications for you, and then twist their arm until they agree to do it for you. There was a little arm twisting. I know.
Oh.
And I'm very much appreciative of this. This came out very nice, in fact. So, what exactly did you do to this guy?
To yours?
Yes.
I did. I made another aventail leather. Unfortunately, Lord of Battles puts their revels in, which are the guys right there. Those little
the studs, essentially.
Yeah, they don't do them in a uniform fashion. They just kind of put them wherever they want to space them.
Okay.
So you have to go through and figure out where to punch the holes in the right spot.
Mm-hmm.
But I did the leather. I made an Aventail liner for it, and since his is has the dags, I didn't sew it on the bottom, so it's just this nice soft material that makes it much easier to put on. You don't have to worry about your face getting hung up on the mail or your beard hair getting hung up in there.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much all I did to this one to
Just
make
for
it better.
comparison, let's see how simple this goes on. Yeah, I'd say that that goes on nice and simple.
Yep.
So one thing that this is more of less a stuff about getting into armor and more about just a general armor tip. What a lot of people will tell you that, oh, actually, I'll say there's two things that are important to talk about when it comes to armor. One is visibility. So in this helmet, I only have the lines here, and I can sort of see through some of the holes in the cone down here. Like Luke had said, he had drilled out the ones on his, so he has a little more on the other side, but it's still limiting a little bit. But what you'll see experienced armored fighters do is nod just a little bit when they're out of range. So when you're approaching your opponent in the fight, you kind of just nod your head slowly, and you can scan across their body and get a better idea when you're out of range, when you're coming into the fight, exactly what they're doing, what guard they're in, what position their feet are in, things like that. And then once you get even this close, pretty much,
Yeah.
now it's just fueling. Now it's just feeling their pressure. Which, by the way, is why, quick note, side note, burping White Claw into a hound skull is not pleasant.
Yeah.
But
yeah. When you burp, you want to open your face mask.
yeah, that would probably be a better idea. But the anyway, fueling is very important to learn when you're doing wrestling and when you're doing just regular Blossfecht and longsword, because eventually you're doing armor. And you don't get to see your opponent that much anymore.
No.
So now everything has to be on fueling, and you have to rely on that sense of touch, which is why it's drilled so much into the earlier parts of the curriculum.
Mm-hmm. And it really puts it into perspective about fueling, if we're going to talk about that. Like, not being able, having the limited visibility and getting into a wrestling situation or a dagger play, you really have to understand what your opponent is doing and where they want to put their energy, which makes doing a counter in wrestling so much easier. If you've ever pulled off a counter in ringing, you'll know what it's about. You'll be like, oh, they're going over there. Let me just accelerate them in that direction. And
Yeah.
It works well.
You are very good at accelerating people in different directions. It is entertaining. Now, what can you tell people about, can you give people a little pointer about breathing in a helmet?
Yeah, when you're wearing a helmet, I know bassinets in particular because that's the kind I wear. Usually I want to breathe in through my mouth and out through my nose, which is the opposite of what you're doing probably if you're running or jogging or normally. But there's a good reason, and that's when you inhale through your mouth, you're pulling air in through all of the breaths, and then when you're exhaling through your nose, you're pushing the air down and out the breaths on the bottom, so that way you don't have as much CO2 building up. One thing, if you're new to harness, you'll notice is that you get a little bit claustrophobic at first when you're new to it, because the CO2 levels rise a little bit if you're not doing your breathing right, or even if you are doing your breathing right, the CO2 goes up a little bit, and with the adrenaline and other stuff, you don't notice until you're kind of out of, you gas out, basically. You're a little short of breath. You take off your helmet, you're fine, but...
You're not actually short of breath or anything, too. It's actually mostly a psychological factor of that almost panic reaction of it feels like you can't breathe. You can breathe just fine, but the ratio just got enough that your brain, like, it just automatically triggered the equivalent of when your smoke alarm goes off because you're boiling an egg.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh, come on, it doesn't need to do that. But I know, yeah, there's a little smoke in here. It's fine. There's no fire. Mm-hmm. But same kind of thing. Your body panics and is like, oh my God, I can't breathe. Please help me right now. And that's something that there's ways to just get used to that. So I know Jason was saying that he was wearing his hound skull around mowing his lawn.
Yeah, mowing his lawn.
I used to do it. I used to wear my this great helm when I first got into armored fighting. When I was doing housework, I was doing dishes and doing vacuuming the house and things. I just wear the helmet when I was doing regular tasks, and it would get me used to the breathing and get me used to the visibility. And yep.
Yeah, I was for me. I was I had an exercise bike at the time and put it in front of the TV and watched Netflix while I was on the exercise bike wearing my bassinet. It was pretty fun. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, it's it's also the breathing part is also funny because I mean, right now, if you're watching this on YouTube many years from now, we're in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, and everything is social distancing. We're wearing masks when we go out in public. And I was at the grocery store the other day, and I was wearing my mask, and I found myself completely automatically. Partway through the store, I realized I was doing my armor breathing. I was just automatically from years of practice. Something over my face, my body was like, "Oh, we're doing this. Okay, cool."
I know how to do this. All right.
Yeah. It worked. It made my glasses not fog up.
Oh,
Because once I became aware of it, I started breathing normally, and then my glasses got foggy. So it works. There you go. Strategy for helmets, for fighting, and also strategy for dealing with foggy glasses while you're wearing a medical mask.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, PPE.
So everyone, thanks for watching. As always, please like, subscribe, share. You know the YouTube drill. We'll go try to get, while this pandemic's going on, more drills out there, more videos for you to go over. If you have any questions about the stuff that you see in this, feel free to come by our website, laurelcitysword.com. You can email me at info@laurelcitysword.com. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, any social media. And, give us a like there and send us any private messages. And we're always looking for ideas for new videos. But in the meantime, thank you, Luke, for coming out. Cheers, my friend.
Cheers.
Claws is laws. Thanks for watching.